Hi everyone, it's Cass. Welcome back to my channel, What Cass Read. Today I am continuing along with this full 7-day week of posting videos by bringing you the 10 best books that I read in 2019. Typically, I don't do a 10 best list. I just have done like all my 5-star ratings of 2019 or 2018. I did that previously, but I kind of went a little overboard with the 5-star ratings last year. And in order to not make this a 40-minute long video, I've narrowed it down and ranked them of my top 10. The top 5, I feel really strongly about that order. 10 through 6 is like, they could all be shuffled around, but I'm still feeling pretty good about it, okay? So let's get started. The 10 best books that I read in 2019. Coming in at number 10 is The Cruel Prince, written by Holly Black. I've said this time and time again, that is this the best written series that I've ever read? No. But this has to get mentioned in the top 10 because this whole trilogy was just a trilogy that I was sucked into. I absolutely had to read this whole trilogy. So The Cruel Prince like represents the whole Folk of the Air trilogy. I think out of all of them, actually I can't name a favorite between Cruel Prince and Wicked King because they were both very, very strong. Anyways, this is a story about Jude Duarte, who is a mortal girl growing up in the Fae realm. She's growing up with her stepfather, her half-sister, and her twin sister. And as a mortal girl growing up in the Fae realm, she has to be very, very careful about what she does. There's constant things that are a danger to her. Her fellow classmates in school are also a pain in her ass. I guess at this stage in the trilogy, she's not necessarily vying for control, but she's vying to be on equal footing with her Fae classmates. The whole trilogy is just super fantastical. I think Holly Black does Fae stories really, really well. And I just had to mention this because this whole trilogy just like hit all the right buttons for me in 2019. So then coming in at number 9 is Sorcery of Thorns, written by Margaret Rogerson. This was a standalone YA novel that completely knocked my socks off. I had actually read An Enchantment of Ravens earlier in 2019 before I picked this one up, and I DNF'd that book. But it made me really, really sad to DNF that book because I really enjoyed Margaret Rogerson's writing. This is a story about a young woman named Elizabeth who grows up in this magical library where all of the books are alive and the librarians there take care of the magical grimoires. All of the grimoires in this world can be classed class 1 all the way through class 10. So class 1 would be a super harmless magical book where class 10 could be really, really volatile. There is something that is coming alive in the libraries, and Elizabeth has to figure it out. Margaret Rogerson's writing style was something that I was really hooked into in An Enchantment of Ravens, but the direction that story went in, I just wasn't feeling it until this book came along. When I heard that there was like sorcery, grimoires, a young girl fighting for what's right, I decided to give it a shot, and I'm really, really glad that I did. So this was another 5-star read that I think it just, again, ticked all of the boxes that I was really looking for. 2019, for me, was the year of young adult fantasy. There were far more 5-star young adult reads than I had, I think, in all of 2018 and 2017 put together, and this was one of them. All right, coming in at number 8, this is Northern Lights, written by Philip Pullman. This is a late entry. I picked up this trilogy essentially because the HBO adaptation came out in 2019 as well, and I'm halfway through that season, but I wanted to read book number 1 first before I started on the season. I'm kind of upset that as a 32-year-old woman, I'm reading this book for the first time. I just really enjoyed this whole magical world. I love the setting where it's like, this is a world that is quite similar to our own, but not similar to our own. I loved Oxford. I loved each of the different settings that Lyra finds herself in. It was just such a great adventure that I'm sad to have missed out on it when I was a child, but I'm pretty glad that I ended up picking up on it as an adult. Do I think that the HBO adaptation did a good job with this? I think so. And it could be because I don't have this like childhood attachment to this book that I was willing to accept what HBO did as far as the world building and the characters, but I really enjoyed what I've seen so far, and I do plan on continuing with this series very soon. Okay, coming in at number 7, another young adult book. This is Scythe, written by Neil Shusterman. This is book number 1 of the Arc of the Scythe trilogy. And I ended up reading this book as a part of, I think, my Newt's readathon. It was just something completely random that I was like, I want to read this book. I'm going to make it fit with the prompt of the whole readathon, and I'm going to make it work. And I really enjoyed this. I finished this book probably in like a day and a half, 2 days. I just flew through it. I don't know, I've talked about this book to a lot of people. I've thought a lot about this book when I haven't been reading it for the last 4 months. So this is in a world where they've solved all of Earth's problems. They've solved war, they've solved poverty, they've solved joblessness, they've solved hunger. They've just solved everything. Any medical advancement that's already been solved. They've already made all the medical advancements. And so it's this utopia world. Because all of these problems have been solved, humans are living longer and longer and longer. They're actually able to reset back to a younger age and start their life over again, so no one's really dying of natural causes anymore. And that's where the scythes come in. This order of scythes goes around and gleans people, it's the word, where they kill someone to maintain population control. I loved the morality aspect of this because we follow 2 young characters who have been tapped to become apprentice scythes, and they follow along with a few of the different like master scythes, I guess, and just developing their own code of ethics. And are they destroying their code of ethics to rebuild a new one? I just took this as a whole morality tale, and I absolutely loved it. I ended up listening to this on the audiobook, really enjoyed the narrator, and so I plan on doing that again for Thunderhead. Okay, this isn't the last sci-fi book, or I'm sorry, this isn't the last young adult book on this list, but it's certainly the last one for a while. So like I said, 2019 was the year of young adult novels for me. This is Skyward, written by Brandon Sanderson. This is the first book in a new series of his. It's a young adult sci-fi series where humans have been living on this planet called Detritus, and their race has been under attack by this alien race called the Krell. Because they've been under attack by these aliens, humans society has gone underground. They make their living underground, have different pockets of civilization. One thing that they all take great pride in is their aviation and their military and their pilot class. So we follow a young woman named Spencer who has long dreamed of becoming a pilot because she has a family history where her father was a pilot, one of the best pilots in their whole fleet, except for the fact that he deserted during this gigantic battle a number of years ago. And it's brought great shame to her family, and she's grown up with kind of a chip on her shoulder. I think that as far as like young protagonists go, she could have like gone down the rails of someone that I didn't like, but she ended up going through like major growth, her journey to become a pilot, the hardships that she has gone through already before we meet her, and how she deals with some of the problems that she encounters throughout this whole story. I absolutely loved it, and I had such a good time with this too, because it was Sanderson, because it was just fast paced, there was a lot of cool action. I found like the space tech flight talk to be like just the right amount of science fiction in there. I think as far as science fiction goes for myself, I might be more into young adult science fiction than adult science fiction, but that's also because I never really like make the leap to adult science fiction. Anyways, I just really enjoyed this book. This cover was also one of my favorite covers of 2019, but we'll get to that when we get to my 2019 book awards. Coming in at number 5 was a book that I ended up reading for the BookTube SFF Awards as one of the best science fiction books in that category, and that is The Calculating Stars, written by Mary Robinette Kowal. I know I just said that like maybe young adult sci-fi is more my thing, but if more adult science fiction was like this was pretty good. This follows a woman named Elma York, and she is a mathematician and she is a pilot, and this takes place in this like alternate history United States just after like World War II. And her husband are on a romantic vacation, and a meteorite crashes on the planet Earth just outside Washington, D.C., and essentially wipes out the entire eastern seaboard of the United States. And because she is a mathematician, her husband is a physicist, they figure out that the Earth is going through an extinction event because of the dust particles that have now been released into the atmosphere. Now it's turning this greenhouse effect on the planet. It's going to get really, really hot, and then it's going to get really, really cold. And they discover that the only way for humanity to survive is to colonize the moon. I loved this book so much. This was another book that I talked to everyone about. I also said that if this book had come out when I was in high school, I probably would have paid more attention in calculus. You know, I just did calculus so I could get into college. And then I did college algebra while I was in college. That's how much I cared about math. But like I said, if this book had come out when I was in high school, I might have had a different opinion about it. This just was like such a good, I don't know, it covered so much stuff. It covered racism in the United States at that time, but just like with a different spin on it, because now we're trying to get people to the moon a lot faster than the United States space race with Russia went. We're talking about sexism because women in the workplace, and she is a mathematician, but she's only eligible to become a certain type of career. Like, she could never become an engineer because she's a woman. Gosh, we cover so much STEM. Like, STEM positive for young girls is the ultimate message for this book, and I absolutely loved it. Again, this was a total knock it out of the park. Again, another late entry. This is Elantris, written by Brandon Sanderson. I finished this book up in the month of December as well. I don't know what I was thinking going into this book. I'll say that I wasn't expecting to love it as much as Mistborn, because so many people are like, it's good, but it's not Sanderson's best. I don't know what you all are talking about, because this book was great. Is it obviously his first novel? I guess it's only obvious that he's grown as a writer because I've been reading so many of his different books at different times. This takes place in this world called Arelon, and we follow three main perspectives. We follow the crown prince, we follow his fiance, and we follow a priest of a different religion. Just outside this new capital city called Kay is the city of Elantris, and Elantris used to be this beautiful city full of gods. It was the city of gods because what happened is this magic would, I guess, penetrate a person at random, and they would be taken over by the magic called the Shroud, and it would turn them into these like godlike immortal creatures. What happened 10 years before the start of this book is the magic failed. Some cataclysmic event happened where the magic failed, the city of Elantris began to rot, and so did the godlike humans. So it's this great mystery of what happened to Elantris. Our young female protagonist is new to this land. She has been sent there from a different kingdom, and so now she's just trying to like figure out what the heck has happened, what happened to the crown prince, what happened to the city of Elantris, and then the new priest coming in from a different religion is trying to convert everybody. And this is just like Sanderson's standalone genius at its best, because it has a great magic system, has great political intrigue, and great characters. So I absolutely love this book. This came in at number 4, just in the nick of time in December. All right, coming in at number 3 is Holy Sister, written by Mark Lawrence. This was my most anticipated book for 2019, my most anticipated new release. I listened to this on audiobook as well, because I listened to both Red Sister and Gray Sister on audiobook. I absolutely loved that narrator. I just don't know if the ending could have been more perfect. You're probably also thinking, didn't you post your most disappointing reads of 2019 earlier this week? And wasn't Holy Sister on that list as well? Yes, but they're my lists and I can do what I want. I was disappointed in, I guess, the length. I was disappointed in the fact that you had to read Bound in order to like fully grasp like where this book starts off, just because you can tell when this book starts off that there's something that happened to the characters without that knowledge of Bound. But everything past that point was perfection. I have conflicting feelings about this whole thing, just because I'm like, was it what I wanted? I'm not entirely sure, but was it perfect? I think so. Which is also why it came in at number 3. I still love the writing. I can't get over, I guess, the resolution that what happens for Nona Gray is such a beautiful ending. This was such a great, like, story about a chosen one that doesn't quite do what you think it's going to do in regards to the chosen one trope. And that's why it's securely in my top 10 and securely at number 3. And again, another science fiction book. This is A Closed and Common Orbit, written by Becky Chambers. This is number 2 best book that I read in 2019. Becky Chambers kind of stole my heart this year. I think this one is going to represent the entire Wayfarer series, the entire Wayfarer trilogy, but this one out of the entire trilogy was my absolute favorite. This is, I guess, a space story in 3 parts. This is what I said, I think, earlier when I talked about this book. Becky Chambers does for me to science fiction what Robin Hobb does to fantasy books. Just this close examination of character and the kinds of things that she puts her characters through is really impactful for me. This also had a very, very, very specific trope that I just kind of like now have come into knowledge that I love this trope. Like I always knew I loved it, but hadn't quite identified it, and that is when artificial intelligence grapples with its humanity. That is kind of the central plot line of A Closed and Common Orbit. So we follow Loveless, who is an artificial intelligence unit that we met in the first book, and she has decided to start her life anew because she has been reset and she cannot be around the crew of the Wayfarer without feeling some kind of way about it. She's not entirely sure if she can be around other people who knew her in her past self, and so it's this AI's journey of discovery. Because she's not like installed into a ship, she's been installed into a human type shell. That also causes problems because that's illegal. And so she's trying to figure out her humanity of like, what does it mean to be human to me? Do I even want to be considered human? It was just all the things that hit everything nail on its head. There's also a parallel storyline about a young girl who grows up with an AI unit that raises her. I should reread this book because talking about it again has just got me right in the feels. I absolutely loved it. Book number 2, A Closed and Common Orbit, written by Becky Chambers. And the number 1 book that I read in 2019 was Strange the Dreamer, written by Laini Taylor. This was another book that came as a complete and total surprise for me. The past couple years when everybody was falling in love with this book, I had kind of like, I didn't want to buy into the hype. I didn't want to jump on that bandwagon. And then of course the BookTube SFF Awards happened and I had to read Muse of Nightmares for that. So that meant I had to read Strange the Dreamer before I picked up Muse of Nightmares, and zero regrets. This is the number 1 book that I read. I don't typically fall for books with this kind of like romantic writing. To follow such a romantic protagonist as Laszlo Strange. This book was about book lovers and about story lovers, and it was so entirely beautiful. There was a quote that I absolutely loved. It says, "The library knows its own mind. When it steals a boy, we let it keep him." I think there was just like another just knockout of the park book for me in terms of like books about libraries and books about book lovers and books about story lovers. Oh, this was amazing. So this follows a young man named Laszlo Strange, who is a child who again grows up in a library. He is a foundling of this war, and because he grows up in the library, he grows up on all these fanciful tales and he becomes enamored with this lost city called Weep. One day coming into town when he's an adult and he's actually written his own theoretical papers on Weep, this stranger comes into town and this band of warriors comes into town saying that they're going to take some people to the lost city of Weep because there has been a terror that has come upon this city and they need outside people's help to help get rid of this terror. He immediately wants to volunteer for this opportunity of a lifetime because he is absolutely, again, obsessed, in love with this mythical city. He's written his own theories on it, and then he goes off on the adventure of a lifetime. This duology, I think this book is going to represent the duology. It just like had the perfect amount of magic. It had the perfect amount of like romance. It had the perfect wrap up. It was all the things that I had no idea what I was getting into with Strange the Dreamer. And as you can see, it just had such an impact on my reading, had such an impact on me personally, which is why this came in at book number 1 for 2019. Whew, so I have no idea how long this video is going to be. This is why I had to narrow it down to the top 10 because my 5-star ratings went out of control this year. So I feel very good. I feel very confident about these top 10. Please let me know what you think of them in the comment section below. And of course, this whole week is going to continue with my best, worst, and of course, we're going to conclude with the 2019 Book Awards. The Book Awards are vastly different from this top 10, so be sure you stay tuned. Follow me on social media if you want. Instagram, Twitter, at whatcassread, same as this channel. Goodreads, that link is also down below. And of course, if you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. It really helps out my channel. Otherwise, you know how these videos end. I will talk to you later. Bye.